Hello and welcome to Bit Inning. Let's start the new inning of life. In Hindi we say it, welcome to Bit Inning and साथ में मिलके शुरू करते हैं जिंदगी की दूसरी inning. So that means that bit inning means that when you it's the second inning of your life. For the first inning that you played without Bitcoin in your life, and then you have this second inning of your life when you meet Bitcoin, when you get to know about Bitcoin. And when this year started, I had ensured that I'll bring at least 10 people who are, people call them Bitcoin maxis, but generally I call them the biggest Bitcoin proponents, or the ambassadors probably is the right word. People who only talk about Bitcoin, people who only believe in Bitcoin, people who live Bitcoin, and people who have dedicated their lives for Bitcoin. And when I say life, it means without expecting anything in return, without expecting that where their Bitcoin will take them, without expecting that are they going to make money out of Bitcoin or not. Their only focus, their only job is to educate people about Bitcoin. And I have a deep sense of respect for all these Bitcoin ambassadors, because I believe if Bitcoin has to grow, Bitcoin can only grow through education. When we talk about it, when we simplify things, when we get to know each other, when we have a conversation around it. And it's very important for maximum number of people to talk about Bitcoin and understand Bitcoin. And let me tell you, the individual right now on the screen, I am one of the biggest fan of this individual. His name is Anil. And why I say that? Because the most important person that I believe who has really changed my life is Saifuddin Amos, because of his book The Bitcoin Standard. Because after that book my life changed, and most of the people who once they read that book, they have the same feeling. But the Bitcoin Standard can only be understood by people who have some kind of a basic education, maybe a graduation degree or some kind of an education where they can actually read the book. But what Anil is doing is far greater than that. I know Anil will not agree to that, because being compared to Saifuddin Amos, because Anil also believes that Saifuddin Amos is his hero. I know, I have heard about his podcast, but still I believe from a layman perspective, what Anil is doing, it's something amazing. Because uh, Anil is doing something in the Bitcoin education space where even a layman, even somebody who has not gone to a school, can actually understand Bitcoin, and that too from scratch. His infographics, the way he's doing it, and I will just take you through that as well, so that you can have an understanding of what I'm saying. But before that, uh, let me allow me to just introduce Anil, and allow me to welcome him. And first of all, he'll tell something about himself, his background, and then I'll take you to his work, and then we'll have a discussion around Bitcoin. This is going to be the most fascinating, most important program around Bitcoin. Trust me. So just be there till end. So, Anil, let's begin.
Wow, Kashif, that's quite an introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Um, I really, benefited from so many other great educators around Bitcoin. And, now I spend a huge amount of my time just trying to simplify Bitcoin so that others may understand it. And, I do that because I believe this is an incredibly important technology that is going to impact everyone.
Yeah,
Whether you agree with it or not, it will impact your life. So, like any other disruptive innovation that's preceded Bitcoin, it
yeah,
it's worth your time to understand it.
absolutely,
And believe me, you have the capacity. Anyone listening, you have the ability to understand this. It is not above you. It just hasn't been explained to you, perhaps in a way that makes sense to you. And
absolutely.
hopefully, we can cover that today.
Absolutely, absolutely. You made a point. I tell you, I want to share a secret with you, Anil. I'm an educator in this space, and I am invited by a lot of banks these days. Banks are suddenly very interested in understanding Bitcoin, and recently I was invited to one of the biggest. I was invited by one of the biggest bank, that is the State Bank of India in the country. So they invited me and for a training program, And whenever I conduct a training program, I only use your slides. So audience who are listening to me, let me just show you something. I mean, let me just share something with you so that you can have an idea of what Anil does and what Anil is doing in this education space. Uh, so yeah, if you see, uh, Anil, with I want to give you this credit. I mean, I made these slides, and most of these slides I use your. So Anil does make these infographics. Anil is the person behind that. Whatever you see, whenever I'm educating somewhere, whenever I'm taking some session, I use these slides, and all these slides are from Anil. Anil designs it, Anil does it. I want to understand how he does it, but let me just go through that. And whenever these banks they look at these slides, it simplifies things. I mean, it is, for me personally, I don't have to waste a lot of time in designing these. Anil, I have to just go pick these amazing infographics from Anil's work that he has done, and that too for free, by the way, guys. I mean, this is the most important part that I wanted to say. This is like he has put in all his energy designing this for us for free. I mean, this is like, I mean, I told them about the use cases of Bitcoin, and they were so thrilled to see these infographics because they got an understanding of how Bitcoin can actually solve this. This is actually the presentation, the live presentation that I did for the State Bank of India in India. So thank you very much, Anil. First of all, I mean,
Yeah,
and
that's
yeah. So yeah, you want to say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say that's fantastic. I mean, I really appreciate that, and also like thank you for doing that. If you got the opportunity to speak to people who may have some influence
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
of the course of the future that we take, that you spent that time trying to help them understand Bitcoin. Like you didn't have to do that, but you did. So thank you.
No,
Um,
no.
and
I
all
want
the
to thank you.
resources. Yeah,
Want,
well,
want to thank
we're
you.
but it's a team effort, right? I can make
Right.
the visuals, but other people are using them to then educate others. And
Exactly.
people have been translating my work into different languages. Hopefully, we'll have more of them in Hindi in the near future.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all free. Use them as you wish. That's what you've done is exactly how I hoped my content would be used. So thank you.
Yeah, so there are more than 40,000 people who follow you, follow Anil on social media handles. If you see, this is, the social media handle of Anil. And, Anil has a handbook as well. I mean, on Amazon, you guys can just go through that. It's available on Amazon. But other than that, I mean, Anil has also got all these beautiful, amazing infographics available, right? Where you can just go and download all of them. My team has got almost all the handbooks, and we have customized these handbooks into presentations according to the need, according to what kind of presentation we are giving. Thank you very much, Anil. You have made my job, my life, I'll be honest, the most. You have impacted my life the most. In I mean, thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. That really means a lot to me, and that's the intention is it, it should be easy to communicate something so important to others, but we just didn't have all the tools and resources. And now you have so many, you know, amazing people creating all this content that spreads out into the world that other people can use. You have hundreds of YouTube videos that people are using to help educate their friends and family. So
Mm.
it's it's a team effort. It's all forms of content. It's across all platforms, and yeah, I hope we have a long road ahead of doing this.
So Anil, thank you very much for this. Let's have some now seriousness around Bitcoin, and let's move forward in this conversation. So Anil, first I wanted to ask you this thing: when you got to know about Bitcoin, I mean, there must have been a point where you got to know about it, and then Why there was this requirement of doing, why you felt that there is a need to do something in the education space because people don't understand this and I have to
Yep.
do this. And was
Yep.
there any personal experience where you felt nothing is more important than Bitcoin right now, and where you actually said, uh, this is one thing that I want to follow till my last breath, you know, and this is probably the purpose of my life, where I really want to educate people around this, and I don't know if I'll be able to make money or on it or not, but where you felt that this is the most important thing that I really want to pursue in my life.
That's a big question. And you alluded it to the answer a bit earlier in how reading the Bitcoin Standard was very transformational for you. Uh, if you read enough historical accounts of countries that suffer because the money is broken, you realize how important of a role money plays in the health of a society and the longevity of a society and the quality of life, because money impacts everything. And people think of money as this singular uh, thing that the government creates, and there's no ability to change that or alter that. But you only go back, 100 years, and then further into history, and you realize, well, no, for most of recorded human history, money was not a government invention. It was decided by the free market. It was the hardest thing to produce. It was the thing that most reliably stored value. And when you can reliably store value, the uncertainty you have around the future drops. You are then free to to pursue the things that are important to you in life. You are not on some kind of treadmill. And I don't have to explain this to an Indian audience. You guys have a very intimate relationship with gold. You get it. You've
Yeah,
understood it. You've
absolutely.
felt the pain around it. But most Western countries, especially the younger generations, have not. They've lived a very comfortable life. Quality of life has continued to appreciate. Technology has continued to advance. The idea that they needed to put any effort into understanding money, it just was a second thought, not a priority. But you travel around South America, you travel around parts of East Asia, most of Africa. Uh, People understand how important money is to the health of a society. So that is really uh, what I want to do, because the more people that understand how important having a reliable a form of money that's you know very hard to manipulate, that is not centrally controlled, that appreciates over time, that benefits from the technological advancement that happens in terms of appreciating and purchasing power, everyone's better off. The only people
Absolutely.
who aren't better off are those that benefit from the current system. Uh, and that's just a game of concentrating wealth and power. So it's
Yeah,
never been more important to understand Bitcoin. And Bitcoin, when I say Bitcoin, I just mean hard money, you know, money that's free from manipulation. Bitcoin just happens to be the hardest money we have currently.
absolutely.
And
So,
yeah,
Atil, I wanted to know from you. You're not from Africa. You're not from Venezuela. You're not from Zimbabwe. You're based out of Canada. My question to you is: people who are based out of developed countries, like I mean US and Canada, generally they are not aware of what's going wrong, or is there anything that they are at risk? Probably somebody in Africa might think that something is broken, something is wrong with my monetary structure or with my central bank. But generally people in US and Canada are the last one to realize that. What was that point in time in your life where you said, okay, I want to understand money? Or was there any incident, or was there any book that once you read that you figured out, oh my god, this is has to be the most important job that I'm supposed to do? So what was that moment?
that's a great question. So my father was born in Uganda. My mother
Oh,
grew up in India. I was born in the UK. I grew up in Australia. Now I live in Canada. So through no skill of my own, just circumstance and luck, uh, I have gotten to have a reasonable look at many different parts of the world.
all right.
And you can connect dots pretty quickly when you see how different people value their time, how they value savings, the concept of
Mm,
savings. And anyone that visits a Western country who is not maybe from a Western country, the thing that really sticks out is that people are very comfortable with the idea of debt. It is almost, and you assume that you will borrow to finance major purchases in your life: a car, a home, your
mm,
education. Uh, and that's only possible as a byproduct of a fiat system that benefits from extracting value from the rest of the world. So uh, you you very quickly realize something um, is very different, and it seems completely unsustainable. It's only now that these maybe developed Western nations that have maybe
mm.
put on a pedestal of as being an example of how we should design a financial system, the cracks are starting to appear finally. That everyone's having to rethink their relationship with money. Um, so it was always going to happen. You know, there's no uh, country in history or money, a form of money um,
Mm.
throughout history that has survived other than something like gold or ones that were chosen by the free market as a commodity and used as money. Uh, so to me, it was just inevitable. I didn't know if it would happen in my lifetime. And the fact that I got to bump into Bitcoin during a very formative part in my life, everything just kind of clicked together. So nothing to do with me being particularly bright or, uh, you know, geared towards action. It just seemed
Mm.
so obvious. I'd be an idiot if I didn't connect those dots.
Absolutely. Yeah, just that they say if you don't understand something properly, you won't be able to explain it. But the way you explain it, the way your infographics speak, you know, your thought is something that makes people realize that how easily or how deeply you have understood the concept, because your infographic speaks a lot about the simplicity, the way you have made it look so simple. So I want to understand, when did this idea of making these infographics click? Because maybe you must have felt that if I found a little difficulty in understanding it, probably this is the area where I need to use infographics to make people understand. Because you could have written a book, probably a textbook, but you opted for infographics in this space. So how that idea clicked in?
Well, Kashif, I'm guessing you've had conversations with many people who are maybe skeptical of Bitcoin, and the conversation usually goes in a few similar directions.
Yeah.
It's too complicated, it's a scam, uh,
Mm.
it's boring. Um, so, how do you create resources that are, interesting in terms of being like visually eye catching, very simple to grasp, doesn't take a university education. You might not even have to be literate. Uh, and thirdly, it has to be very difficult to argue with the logic. So if someone saw it, they wouldn't be able to poke holes in it. So those are the three kind of key tenets that I use to make infographics. And you know, uh, a lot of people don't have access to um, an education system or the technology to
Yeah.
go on YouTube and learn about anything they want. But uh, that shouldn't be a reason they cannot understand Bitcoin and hopefully have access to Bitcoin in the future as a way of protecting their savings. because that's all what we're really talking about, is how do you let people create value in the world and then be able to actually store that value and not have it be debased by a government through, inflation. And I believe everyone should have access to that. That's, a fundamental thing. And the fact that governments rob people of that is just terribly sad, especially the most vulnerable.
Absolutely.
So,
So, so Anil, want to understand from you that what is the situation right now, as you are based out of Canada, that I know. Uh, so, how is this situation, say, in Canada? Because while it's easy to talk about Nigeria, it's easy to talk about Venezuela. People think that, oh, the problem is happening in Africa. Oh, the problem is happening in Venezuela. Oh, the problem is happening in, say, some other, country, where it is very easy to blame, maybe Lebanon. But I tell people that, you hear them because they are covered in the mainstream media more, but things are equally getting worse in other part of the world as well, and the most developed ones, like the kind of videos that are coming in from Canada, the kind of videos that are coming in from US, and everybody is talking about inflation. Everybody is saying that they are not able to afford groceries. People are comparing the $100 bill of 2019 with 2023. There are videos that are coming in where people are not able to afford basic groceries. People are worried about the future. uh, the people are not able to afford rents in places like Canada and US. So a lot of things are happening. Can you just give a
mhm.
brief idea of how things are shaping up in these developed nations, and especially Canada and maybe US?
Yeah. So Canada, I think, has followed a very similar trajectory to Australia. And I think those are interesting countries because those are Canada and Australia, two countries that usually top these lists that come out of most desirable places to live or the most coveted
Yeah,
passport.
yeah,
And I think part of the reason they have been on those lists for so long is because they were really selling the future to pay for the present. And what I mean by that is both countries went through a big resource boom. They were fortunate to have abundant natural resources
yeah.
that were in demand at the time, largely from China while it was industrializing. So both countries saw, a lot of prosperity as a result of that.
Hmm.
Now, the next kind of stage in that playbook is, well, okay, now we're going to use immigration as our next tool to kind of keep the party going.
Yeah.
So that's, a lot of international students because you want to develop a very strong, university base.
Hmm.
Um, and then that usually flows into a real estate boom. So there's kind of these markers that you see that happen in the same order in both countries over the last few decades. And now we're kind of reaching the end point where they've squeezed all the juice from that lemon, and they've been kicking that can down the road. So things have been really good for a really long time, and by delaying that necessary pain, I guess that an economy has to feel, it's just accumulated, and it's now hitting that maybe breaking point. So I'll give you a little a thing that made it very clear to me was, so I moved to Canada as a international student to pursue MBA, and then after that I went to work for a university here in Canada in graduate business school admissions. Now this was, I want to say, about 7, 8 years ago, maybe. And even then, I would see even some top applicants from India who would maybe get an offer from a Canadian or an American school, and they would do some basic calculations: cost of living, uh, student debt, uh, expected future salary. And then they would look at their acceptance letter from IIT, and they would think, you know what? I think it's actually a better option to stay and go to IIT. I think my life might actually be easier, and the probability that I'll be successful will be better if I stay in India. And for me, that was the turning point. That was, there's no going back. The ship is doing its 180, and to me that kind of marked a bit of a decline in Canada, and I imagine the same was happening in Australia, uh, in terms of attracting the best and brightest.
Hmm.
So it just proved to me that you cannot rely on your global reputation as as having this untapped stream of foreign talent to come to your country and contribute to an economy. There are limits. Everyone has a limit, and now uh, in Canada, the cost of living has increased at the fastest rate it has in most people's living memory. And when you
Okay.
get very used to things being very stable and life is continually getting better for a very long time, you get more fragile, right? You're not being tested regularly. Um, you know, so people get a bit fragile that when a you know things like that happen, your cost of housing appreciates very quickly, your groceries get very expensive very quickly, you're caught off guard because remember everything you financed everything with debt because that's just what's done. So you don't have any savings necessarily, and there's just no room for adjustment. So it's really unfortunate, but I think it was entirely predictable. So we'll see what happens over the next few years.
All right. So, yes, because I keep listening to these stories that the rent have really spiked, in the last couple of years, and the governments have been spending quite heavily on subsidies and those unemployment stuff that you get in developed countries, where
Yep.
you get some $800 or $1,200 in your bank account, especially
Yep.
during COVID era. Almost everybody got it, so probably for how long that is sustainable is a question mark. So I think
Yeah. And that's just really an exercise in trying to buy votes during a
yeah,
very dangerous political time for people in
dangerous,
power. And
absolutely.
and the only reason you can do that and people will take those government checks is because they don't understand inflation. If you understood that all this money is being printed to give you
Hmm.
those checks, and the end result is going to be your groceries are going to cost more, and those checks really won't make much of a difference. In fact, you might be worse off
Hmm.
in the future. Yeah, so it's something you can only it's a playbook you can only use once, a strategy
Hmm.
you can only use once before people kind of figure it out. People now are starting to figure it out.
Absolutely. So, Anil, I wanted to understand from you that probably there would have been a time in life where you would have felt that maybe Bitcoin is okay, and let me also try in some other coins as well, because that area is also growing. There's a lot of noise in other altcoins as well. Why you felt that no, I want to stick with the most important thing right now is Bitcoin, and if you can fix that, probably you can fix every other thing. So, what was your feeling? There was a time where you felt that okay, let me try some other stuff as well on some other chain, or it was only about Bitcoin.
Yeah, like my first exposure uh, to Bitcoin happened at a time when there weren't really any other alternatives. The
That
ICO
was
boom
year.
hadn't
That was
happened.
year
Sorry?
2016. Of what was
No,
that year?
it was maybe 2013, 2014.
All right.
Now, before anyone gets excited, no, I didn't connect the dots right away. I didn't go out
Yeah,
and
yeah.
buy all the Bitcoin I could. I still thought it was some novelty. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe it works. Probably it won't. Um,
No.
but that was my first exposure to it. Now, not everyone is going to be particularly interested in the technical side of Bitcoin, but I'd encourage you to look at how Bitcoin actually works in terms of how transactions get confirmed, how and that can happen just by sending some Bitcoin back and forth with a friend on chain. So I know there are other solutions you can use to do it faster, cheaper, but I'm talking about actually using Bitcoin's, blockchain. Because when you do that, you can really think through, okay, uh, maybe a blockchain can really only um, be used to transact its own native token. So anything outside of its native token, stapling on other bits and pieces probably isn't going to work. So if you can understand that a blockchain is only useful for transacting its native token, then you can understand, well, okay, there needs to be some economic incentive for miners, and that's proof of work. It's a whole different topic, but you realize that that native token has to compete as money. If it doesn't, there's no long-term future in that chain. So blockchain has to transact its native token. That token must compete as money. Well, now you have to understand, okay, what is money? What are the properties that make a good money? Is this a good money? Will this compete against the dollar, the yen, the rupee? Um, and if you go down that line of reasoning, eventually you realize, yes, you know, Bitcoin is money. It's a very good money. It might be the best money we'll ever see. Um, Therefore, anything valuable or useful will be built using Bitcoin. There's no other use case for a blockchain other than money. And I think, we've got 14, 15 years of history now to kind of prove that over a long enough time frame, everything trends to zero against Bitcoin. And, you might be interested in other potential applications. That's great. I have all the power to you. I have nothing against you doing that. But I believe you're you will be better off. Your future will be brighter if you first take the time to understand money uh, and Bitcoin as a monetary good that is competing against other global monies, because that will just suck in everything around it. Um, so that's kind of where I stand on that.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And I think your thoughts are in line with Jeff Booth and many other, many other Bitcoin ambassadors. So I want to understand from you. Jeff Booth says, in his book, The Price of Tomorrow, he has spoken about the technology. As the technology grows, price should have come down, probably because you are good at producing things in mass quantities with better technology and lesser people, right? The resources goes down, you can now produce more with latest technology, but the price doesn't come down. So he says that there will be a point in time where there are going to be huge layoffs as the technology, like now we are seeing AI, as AI is threatening to take a lot of jobs. So how do you see the growing tech and the mass layoffs that you see going forward? How you see that things are going to take a shape? Are things are going to improve in terms of employment and things like that, or you think that there are going to be issues where there are going to be people who are going to be unemployed? Because today, if I was talking to somebody and I said he was preparing to go to Canada, and I said, what are you going to do there? He said, that I will figure out. But the situation right now in Canada or other places is that there is not much of a work these days, because a lot of this stuff will be taken by AI. So immediately it clicked that, is immigration going to go down maybe in future, because they might say that now most of our things are being done by robots or AI and softwares. Why do we even need more people, right? So these are the kind of debates that have already started to happen. How do you see things evolving in future?
Yeah, I guess first we have to recognize that these debates aren't new. They've been happening for centuries. When the mechanized loom was invented, all the textile workers thought, well, there's going to be mass layoffs. What are we going to do? Maybe we'll have a future where only a handful of people work. Well, no, those laborers repurposed. The market evolves and demands other things. At the end of the day, you put effort and time into creating something that you hope the market will reward or believe is valuable, and they will compensate you for it. You know, there's no guarantee that you should have a job. And I don't mean that to sound like mean or cruel. Um, it's just that I think what I see in, in Canada and Australia, uh, because those are just maybe the two countries I'm most familiar with, is there is a lot of wasted productivity. When a government's sole goal is to keep employment high, they're not concerned with how productive maybe your
Oh,
country is. So there are a lot of, they're called, I guess, like useless jobs, where someone might be sitting in an office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but when you try to actually measure the economic output of that person, it's zero. Or in some cases, it
yeah.
might be negative because they're a drag on an organization by adding another layer of bureaucracy. And you see these stats if you look at the number of administrators in an organization, whether it's a university, a hospital, within government, and in a lot of Western countries that have the privilege of printing their own currency and exporting inflation elsewhere, those charts just go up and to the right because the number of administrators just grows over time because your goal is just to have people employed. It's not necessarily to be productive. So, we talked a bit about some of the slides that I made, and you can download them for free on a site called Gumroad. Now,
Hmm.
Gumroad is a company that I'm also an investor in, but it's really interesting to me because anyone in the world can upload any digital product and get compensated or paid by potential buyers anywhere else in the world. So it's not tied to any geographical location. I don't need to be anywhere. My customers don't need to be in any particular jurisdiction. And Sahil, the CEO of Gumroad, he takes that approach to heart. So he pays his engineers. Uh, I don't know the exact figure, but for the sake of argument, let's say it's 100 grand US. You don't need to live in any particular country. All his employees are remote. So now that engineer in Canada is competing with a global talent pool. So this is maybe just the concept of remote work uh, leveling the playing field for skills of all kinds. So will that have an effect on immigration? Maybe. Will it lead to job losses? Well, it will lead to some in some places, but then it'll lead to net job creation elsewhere. Because what's really happening now between technology um, and money becoming borderless is those jurisdictional boundaries are just slowly coming down. If anyone can work from anywhere, and anyone in the world can earn a hard money without the need to, verify their identity and get a bank account in some particular region, well, the world just becomes a lot fairer. And that's not going to sit well with someone who's being compensated currently significantly above their skill level. No one's going to want a lower standard of living. Um, but in the short term, I think that's the reality. The long term is that over time, technology will take care of that. It improves our quality of life. Uh, but a lot of people right now are in for a rude awakening, I think, in some Western countries.
Absolutely. Hmm. What is your take on the latest things that are happening in US in terms of Fed rate? I mean, Fed is outlook on rate hikes. They're not coming down. They're saying everything is fine. Unemployment is under control. Stock markets are doing great. Let us take a pause probably, and we'll evaluate things. And now the new 3% inflation seems to be, the 3% inflation, they're saying that probably is going to be the new 2%. So that might happen in US. How do you see things happening in US, and how that is really going to affect the world? And I want to club two question where we are also seeing that there's a uh, uh, there is a consistent effort from countries like India, Russia, South Africa, and BRICS, where they are trying to de-dollarize the world. How do you see these things happening in the world, and what is going to happen, in your opinion, in terms of de-dollarization? And are you seeing that dominance of US coming down in future?
I am not smart enough to answer that question, Kashif.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think overall, my personal approach is to always just tune out the noise. So let's say, uh, hypothetically, if the BRICS nations uh, create a new currency
Hmm.
uh, that is potentially gold backed, let's say, well, okay, let's look at gold versus Bitcoin over the last 5 years, 10 years. Well, Bitcoin has massively outperformed gold in terms of preserving purchasing power. I'm not talking about getting wealthy. I'm talking about being able to preserve your wealth and not have it be debased, which gold was primarily the vehicle that people around the world used to do that. Um, so Bitcoin outperforms gold. So the BRICS currency is really just a non-starter in my mind, um, because if they want to compete with the US dollar, they would have to do something to give people more confidence than the US gives um, people around the world. Now, you know, then we look at the dollar. Okay, well, what's the history of Bitcoin versus the US dollar? Well, yes, okay, it's volatile in the short term. You'll see headlines in the news that, oh, Bitcoin's crashed 50% over the last year. It's all over. But you got to zoom out, get rid of the noise from those charts, and it's the same deal. You know, Bitcoin has massively outperformed the dollar over, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, six. If you're using it as a long-term savings device, nothing has outperformed Bitcoin. If you understand that, then you can tune out focusing on, what is the next interest rate announcement going to be? Is this block of nations going to get together to compete against the dollar? And I mean, I'm sure it has real world consequences for people in a variety of different ways that I probably don't understand. But if your sole focus is to uh, protect your wealth, and potentially have your wealth appreciate over time, and require the least amount of mental effort, so it can free you up to be present with your friends and family and loved ones, to focus on the work you actually want to do in life. uh, you know save in Bitcoin, and tune out all that noise, um, because all these reactions that we see in the world are just going to get more extreme over time. And one thing I always go back to is, so Parker Lewis, if anyone listening isn't familiar, there's a guy called Parker Lewis. He wrote a series of essays called Gradually Then Suddenly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, you can find him online. And, all his essays tackle a different topic. One in particular looks at the mechanics of the US dollar system and the Federal Reserve. Long story short, every crisis uh, or event has to be larger than the previous one. So, 2008 had to be bigger than the dot com burst in 2001. COVID had to be bigger than 2008 and the financial crisis. Whatever's coming next has to be bigger than COVID. The reason being is, if it's not bigger, the response is not bigger in terms of, say, money printed, the whole system collapses. And if you're in charge of a system, you're going to push it to its limit versus seeing it collapse. So I don't know what the next interest rate decision might be, um, but I'm very, very confident that at some point in the future, uh, the supply of US dollars globally will expand by an order of magnitude.
Right.
And the reason that's important to me is because what might happen to Bitcoin? Will that be more or less attractive to people as a money that that cannot be inflated beyond 21 million. So I imagine a lot more people will become interested in Bitcoin. I believe a lot more purchasing power will accrue to Bitcoin. And yeah, I think that's the unfortunate future that lies ahead.
Right. Anil, what we'll do, we'll play a short, game with you. What we'll do,
Sure.
we'll go through your Twitter handle and pick some of your infographics, and we'll like you to explain it in 2 3 minutes, 2 minutes
Sure.
max, where you say what this infographics is depicting. Because I want people to frequently visit your Twitter handle. I want them to frequently go to your infographics section where they can find it and download it and use it. Right. There are few infographics. They are they are so fascinating that I really want you to explain from your own perspective, because your infographics are open. Anybody can understand them in their own way, but I want to understand it from your thought process, and what you want to say through that infographic. So let me just
Sure.
share your Twitter handle. uh, I found one of this. I mean, can you just explain this?
Yeah, I mean, you had Jeff Booth on your show, so I'm
Yeah,
sure he touched on this concept in a bit more detail. But the idea behind this is the concept of scarcity. So if you have scarcity uh, in, oh, sorry, let's start with the other side. If you don't
yeah,
have scarcity in money, then people can't store their purchasing power in that money. They
yeah,
need to store it in something scarce. So they will use money to acquire scarce assets because, abundant money then chases these scarce assets.
yeah,
Usually it's real estate, gold, other commodities, things that are difficult to inflate or difficult to produce quickly in the same time span that money can expand very quickly. So
hmm,
that's right why right now you see a lot of asset bubbles in different asset classes, because money's become abundant and people need to find somewhere to store their purchasing power. Uh, the other side of this infographic is the flip side of that. Well, okay, let's look at a world under Bitcoin. If money is scarce, so you cannot produce more of it without great effort, and you have to the only way to acquire more of that scarce money is to produce value that other people then are willing to exchange their money for. Well, you've got a lot more people trying to create value in the world, and they will
wow,
do that by uh, you know basically building the things that people want. And right now in a lot of places, a very basic need is housing. So this infographic, I just used things from a Monopoly board. If you're familiar with the board game Monopoly,
yeah, yeah, I know
yeah,
Monopoly.
this might make more sense to you.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, this
yeah,
makes wow, fascinating. I mean, it is so wonderful to understand it from your perspective. Okay, let up now you need to explain this.
okay. So anytime you put a group of people in charge of supplying money to a society, there's a risk of something called moral hazard. It's that them acting in bad faith and trying to very sneakily steal from the population. Uh, we see it today through inflation. The government can print money that you and I have to actually earn. Uh, and every time they print money, it devalues any savings we might have, because now there's more money chasing the same amount of goods. This is nothing new throughout history. Uh, you know, kings, royalty, shahs have done the same thing, and they've done it through uh, different strategies. Because prior to fiat paper money, a lot of say recorded monetary history is based around gold, silver, copper, like physical coinage. And coins were still subject to inflation because rulers, and there's a really good example with King Henry VIII. You can Google this example. It's called the Great Debasement, where uh, they basically would uh, dilute the quantity of silver in a particular unit of currency, and over time they diluted it so much that it became so obvious that the layer of silver on top of a copper coin was so thin it would just wear right off. And that's just another form of inflating the supply and stealing from people, because they're trading their full silver coins for something that's mostly copper, but both cosmetically look the same.
Great. Okay, let me find some more. This is so fascinating. I mean, I can do an entire show on this. So this is probably easy. People will get to know. So this evolution of money is again one of the fascinating way to explain people about money and how. Uh, so your Twitter handle, I mean, it's a must. It's a must visit. I always tell people to just go and so this is again, uh, you know, not Bitcoin, probably,
Yeah, and
still
this is
Bitcoin.
that's an important one, just because there, unfortunately, with anything that is important and sound,
Hmm,
and it's impossible for someone to get uh, wealthy off promoting Bitcoin, because it's difficult for someone to take basically a shortcut to wealth with Bitcoin. You have people who promote Bitcoin by offering something that isn't actually Bitcoin, in the hopes of capturing less informed people. So be very careful if you are at the point where you're deciding to purchase Bitcoin as a savings instrument. Watch out, because there are going to be people trying to scam you. You know, so that's the point of this one.
oh, perfect. So what's this?
Oh, that's
Hmm,
just a meme. So I'm sure people have
okay.
heard about WorldCoin.
Yeah,
Uh,
WorldCoin. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
was just, if you're giving up your biometric data in exchange for some printed token,
Hmm,
likelihood that token's going to hold its value over time is very low. Um, protect your biometric data. Don't just give it up to some corporation.
yeah. Wow. So yeah, this looks very important. History of money enforced by market and enforced by violence. Wow.
Yeah, just read history. The more you read about history,
Hmm,
the more you'll connect the dots between a um, a civilization's decline, and if it's not due to environmental forces,
hmm,
it's like a flood or a famine. It's usually due to debasement of the money, because once the money is broken, people don't have a reliable way to exchange value with one another. People stop creating value, or
hmm.
or exit, and then a civilization usually declines, because no one's producing the essential things that the people need to survive. Um, so yeah, it just kind of this the point of this is just to show how much of an anomaly fiat money created by a government centrally is in the history of things. If given the choice, people are not going to choose that option. They want something that's been chosen by the market and tested by the market, by you and I.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, from my perspective, when I look at this slide, I mean, as I said, that the beauty of the work you have done, the beauty is that everybody is will try to understand it from their perspective. For me, it is like uh, history suggests that for the longest period of time, uh, things that were hard to produce, survived for the longest period of time, and they even exist today. It's just that the the money, that the current form of money that we see today, is enforced by law, and the history of it is, it's so small in front of the history of money that was enforced by the market. So when the market was given this liberty to choose their money, they chose the hardest form of money. And the money at present which is enforced is the money that is enforced by law, probably. And probably that money is easy to produce in comparison to the money that markets opted for. So yeah, this is again
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly. And well, that's a like, let me ask you a couple of questions because,
Yeah.
India has this unique position where enough citizens hold physical gold that
Yes.
there is a level of accountability faced by the Central
Yeah.
Bank of India because of that. Um, so, how much time and attention do people pay to the price of gold denominated in rupees, would you say?
So Anil, let me give you a perspective. Indian government has close to 700 tons of gold in their reserve. But when it comes to people, as per the estimate, there are 25,000 ton of gold is with people. 25,000 ton is, if I have to give you a number, US government in their reserve, they have close to 8,800 tons worth of gold. And then you have Russia and Germany close to 4,500, 5,000 tons. So just imagine the people in India have close to three times of what US has in the reserve. So that's why, uh, money is something that is taught in Indian households once a child is born. The child sees their parents and grandparents believing in gold. So whenever there is an occasion, whenever there is a child birth, a new family member enters, or when there is a ceremony, when there is a wedding ceremony, or if there is a festival, on every occasion, even a marriage anniversary or something like that, gold is an expression. Gold is a communication of love and care and respect to each other. And in Indian households, there is a saying, it's a meme basically, where gold can only come, it cannot go out of the family.
Hmm. Mhm.
People have this emotional connect with gold. Why? Because gold will only, the way gold enters into the house is through relationships. So people will always tend to hold the gold with it for its emotional, this thing that
Mhm.
my dad gave me, my mother-in-law
Yep.
gave me, my grandfather gave me this. So because of this thing, people have a very close relationship with gold. And that is the reason that Indian citizens are much more well versed in comparison to maybe other people, when if you compare them. But the government of India doesn't like that. Why? Because I give you a reason. India doesn't produce gold. India has to import gold, and it is the second biggest import material that they get for India. And India has to shell out a lot of foreign exchange to get gold. India want their people to go for a paper form of a gold, digital gold. They don't want people to run for a physical gold, because for physical gold, government has to shell out dollars, and the reserves, every year the reserves are challenged, because every year
Mm.
people are buying more and more gold. Government has been convincing people to buy sovereign bonds, digital gold, gold
Mhm.
ETF, but somehow people are very smart, and
Mm.
then they
Mhm.
are not buying it because they don't feel that emotional connect in ETFs and
Right.
sovereign bonds.
Yep. Yeah.
That ability. So people, so you can say that India is a Bitcoin country, to be honest. I mean, because if a country understands gold, and if a country has a relationship with gold, probably they will easily have a connection with Bitcoin, right? And that is the
Yep.
reason India is one of the fastest growing market in terms of crypto adoption, and Bitcoin adoption as well. And I think in going forward, as more and more people learn about it, get education on it, probably there will be a time that India, as their uh, uh, as they have this love for gold, probably they will have love for Bitcoin and its self custody, because India believes in self custody. Because most of the
Hmm.
people who hold gold in their houses, and they still like to hold wear those probably. So this is one thing that I feel India is Bitcoin ready. I must say that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that you bring up. That like Indians naturally know how to self custody.
Yeah, yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
looking forward to that. Let's see. But thank you very much, Anil. I think it's almost been an hour into this show. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, especially the way you explained your infographics. I can go on and on. I have more than 50 infographics where I can just go on and on with the conversation. Probably, maybe
yeah,
next time, maybe we can cover more infographics. And
certainly. Yeah. Thanks so much, for taking the time and for all the work that you do. Um, yeah, it's been a great chat. I hope to have more content out in the near future, and
what are
hopefully
your
gonna.
plans for the future after maybe some kind of a course or maybe something like that?
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm gonna put together a very high level introductory course to Bitcoin. That'll mostly be visuals, um, and I also want to create a resource where people can kind of go to it, just drag and drop any of my slides, and there are probably close to 1,000 now to create their own presentation, custom for a particular audience or group that
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
talking to. So hopefully that'll also save people some time. So
You're
that's the
already
goal.
saving. You're already saving a lot of. Your work has allowed me to save a lot of time. I mean, I going forward in future, this will be amazing idea. What you
Yeah,
have
thank you.
done for this community is something. Your work is like, I mean, people not talk much about it. I tell you, once they get to know the kind of work that you do, it's something that it's mind blowing. I have never seen this kind of a work in Web 2 even, where people have taken pain to make. This can only come, once you believe in an idea, once you believe in, that something needs to be fixed.
Yeah,
And that is what I love about, Bitcoin, as people say, maxis. But that is what, because if Bitcoin maximalism, by the way, people don't know, it is also one of the most important ingredients of Bitcoin. uh, People talk about miners, people talk about nodes, people talk about developers, core Bitcoin, people talk about Bitcoin core. But Bitcoin maximalism is also one of the ingredient to make Bitcoin successful. Imagine if there are not, if imagine if there is no Bitcoin maximalism existing today. Imagine, then probably all these altcoins probably would have been, because once you have an incentive to print more, everybody wants to print more. By the way, people
yeah,
love to print more money, and altcoins are nothing but the power to print more money. And that is what the power central bank also enjoys. So there is no difference, much of a difference in that. So that is exactly the reason maximalism is one of the most ingredient element. And today, you must have realized that after listening to Anil and the kind of work that he has been doing, that too for free of cost, is something that just tells you that people are dedicating their life and time and energy to this cause. And by the way, you need to have a deep respect for this effort. And with this thought, thank you very much, Anil. A big salute to you. I will leave all the links and descriptions and all the social media handles and relevant links of the books and the work what Anil has done in the description below. And please, guys, do visit that, do follow Anil. And if you like this content, do like it, do put in your comment, and do share it on social media. And we'll also do that. And we'll continue to invite guests like these. And probably in another episode, if we'll call Anil and probably play a game or something like that, maybe, or something very interesting with Anil. And we'll do it frequently with Anil, if Anil allows to do that.
yeah. Kashif, had a lot of fun. Thanks again for having me and for continuing to give voice to Bitcoin as a savings technology. And yeah, anytime you want to do this again, I'd be happy to. So thank you again.
Right. Okay, Anil, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Cheers.